the Lifetime Achievement Award. This is being presented in association with Star Television. So I'm going to invite Gayatri Yadav. I'm only inviting the presenter on stage. Gayatri Yadav, the President of Consumer Strategy and Innovation of Star Television, to join us on stage. Rajesh Mascarenas and Gurbir Singh, please, can you come up on stage? The Lifetime Achievement Award goes to a journalist that we all grew up watching, a very handsome man at that, Sir William Mark Tully. Give me a second, I'd like to read out the citation, please. The RedInk Award for Lifetime Achievement for Sir William Mark Tully is in recognition of his long and outstanding contribution to Indian journalism. Over several decades, Mark Tully came to personify BBC's timely and rigorous reporting of news in the subcontinent. In the days of government control, it was to BBC and Tully's team that the common man in India often turned to final verification. Sir William Mark Tully. Mark Tully or Sir William, please can I invite you to say a few words to us.
Well, I'm overcome by this award and by the reception you've just given me. You know, I always say that we journalists should be humble, and we should acknowledge the fact that often stories are about other people. We only write their stories. I remember, you know, often going to Bangladesh in times of famine and other such times as that, and I would be taken by a helicopter with a press party onto some remote chal or something like that. And I would then, there I would see people who, for instance, had been living on the beams of what was much more than a bamboo hut for a week. The helicopter would come again, would take me back to the comfort of the Intercontinental Hotel in Dhaka, where I would file the story. And I often used to think to myself, really, we are, in a way, like nothing more than vultures. Now, I don't say that. I don't say that to denigrate our profession. I believe in it profoundly, but I do say it because I feel, in a way, that the reception you give me, the award you give me, could give me a very swollen head, and could make me the worst form of journalist, which is an arrogant journalist. I would also like to say this, that I wouldn't be here standing before you were it not for a team of wonderful people who worked with me when I was the BBC correspondent in Delhi. We had local reporters, we called stringers, all around the country, and I had my colleague Satish Jacob with me. And these were the people really who brought the news. And these were the people who suffered. That was the terrible thing about it. My good friend Ataus Samad in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, one day I was working with him. The next day I was in Corbett Park enjoying myself, but I had to turn round the day after that because I heard that General Ershad had arrested him. Only 2 days ago, my good friend Yusuf rang me up from Srinagar to congratulate me on this award, and I reminded him of all the work he had done and of the fact that because of his reports for the BBC, he had been arrested by the army. So we were all together, I like to think, and my friendship with all these people has remained very much intact, and I owe them an enormous debt. And I also, of course, know an enormous debt to the BBC, because without working for that wonderful organization, I would not be standing here either. I'm pretty sure of that. And I also owe a profound debt to the people of India who have allowed me to live here as a foreigner for some 50 years. And I should say, not taking it against me, that I am actually, I think, the fourth generation of colonialists, British colonialists, to live in this country, because my great-great-grandfather was, of all things, an opium agent in Eastern Europe. But you people have taken me to your heart, and I feel very much an Indian and a Brit at the same time. I'm proud of both my legacies. I just perhaps might say 2 or 3 small things, well, I hope they're not too small, about the media, because I've been listening to what has been said. I have been fascinated by the variety of awards you have given, which are a wonderful tribute to the variety of the media. It's much broader in its coverage now than it was when I started back in the 60s. And that's something which is to be highly commended. But I think there were 1 or 2 things, I feel anyhow, about the media, and the media generally, and the media in India in particular. First of all, on the very vexed question, which has rightly been stressed and re-stressed, of fake news. It is absolutely essential that we do our best to root out, to discover, to expose fake news whenever we can. And it is essential that those of us who have the privilege of working for the well-known organizations make absolutely sure, and as far as we can, that the organizations we work for are the sort of organizations people will turn to when they check the news. They will say, I don't want to look at this story anywhere else except the media which I trust. And so retaining the trust of our readers and our viewers and our listeners, and I'll come to that in a minute, has never, ever been more important than it is now. But one caveat, it is equally important that we do not ourselves purvey fake news. And it's very easy to do that if we forget the old maxim of check your facts. Actually, when I was in Britain, I've just come back from London, I heard on a, not BBC, but on a British channel, the report that the former governor of the Reserve Bank was going to be the former governor of, being the governor of the Bank of England, which of course later turned out to be fake news and could have easily been checked by making some inquiries in London. So it is easy, even for us, to be purveyors of fake news if we do not check our facts. Another thing which I regret is that, and I often feel this in India, that I wish we followed up our stories more. I wish we kept our stories going longer. And one of the examples which always sits in my mind is the Commonwealth Games, because we had so much exposure of corruption scandals there, and yet, in the end, I don't think any of us were left with any clarity as to what happened in the end, who went to jail, who didn't go to jail, why people who had been accused by the media of corruption didn't go to jail or did go to jail. We didn't follow that up. In our haste, and I think this is particularly true of the television media, to move on to the next breaking news, we forget the news which has broken. And there is, if I can be a bit political, I think there is an example of this in the present embroglio in Karnataka. Because in the presence of a learned and very senior judge, I would have the temerity to say this: it is our right and our duty sometimes to question judicial decisions. And this is particularly so when a case is dropped or a strange verdict is found because either a lot of witnesses have changed their evidence or the police have withdrawn some witnesses. We all know what happens in those cases. And it perhaps is a dangerous thing to say, but if we look at the present situation in Karnataka, there are reasons to wonder whether we shouldn't even now at least be questioning what happened to the cases against the Chief Minister and the Reddy brothers. And I leave that as a thought for you. And the last thing, really, I want to say about the media here is a sadness I feel about these awards. There was no radio. And I say to you with pride that I am primarily a radio journalist. And I made my name, and you are all sitting here because of my radio dispatches. And I always said, and I still maintain it, that given the chance to do radio or television, I will always choose radio, and I still do choose radio, and I still do radio regularly. Now, why do I say this about radio? Well, one, it is a wonderful medium to work in. Your writing skills have to be quite unique. It's quite different to doing television and quite different to doing print journalism. But the other reason is because radio actually has an enormous impact. When I travel around this country and I talk to young journalists, I'm told radio is dead. But in Britain, the main political program, the one all the politicians want to get onto, the one that sets the agenda for the day, is the Today program on Radio 4. And throughout the day, you will find people getting their news from the radio, and many, many times you will find audience, particularly breakfast time, audience higher for radio than for television. Now, radio, why is it such an important medium? Well, for two reasons, really. One, practical, because it is a highly convenient medium, because you can do a whole lot of other things while you're listening to radio. And at breakfast time, you're making your porridge or making your bed or packing up your bag to go to work or to school, and you can listen to radio. Then if you have the good fortune to drive to work, you can listen to the radio. But it's far deeper than that. There are two crucial aspects of radio which I think people really need to be aware of. Number one is that you have to work much harder to listen to radio. The problem with television is it's all very easy to see it, to see the pictures, not bother much about the script, and it slips by. But in radio, if you don't listen, if your mind is not working, then you're going to get nothing out of it. And of course, I'm talking about speech radio here. Now, that's one thing. So therefore, it sticks in your mind. But it sticks in your mind for another reason, too, because it is a very intimate medium. You are often listening to radio on your own. Television, you're with the family or something like that. And because you're listening to your own, because of the intimacy of good radio, you end up thinking that this guy or this woman is actually speaking to me individually. And I always tell a little story here about a woman who came up to me. I had been speaking in the cathedral city of Hereford in India, in London. And I said, I don't know why so many people have come to listen to me. I'm only a journalist. And this lady came up to me afterwards, an elderly lady, and said to me, I have come to hear you because I think you are my friend. And that is the greatness of radio. And so I think it's absolutely tragic that in this country we haven't been able to fight hard enough to get good speech radio in this country too. But journalists are missing a wonderful opportunity to exercise the craft, and Indians are missing a wonderful opportunity to listen to a unique media. And the last thing I would say about India, and you would say, I would say this, I'm sure, but the last thing I would say is I do believe in public service broadcasting. I have worked for the BBC on and off now for 50 years, and I can honestly say that never at any time in my career was pressure put on me by anyone in the management to alter anything I said. And very often I was in highly controversial situations. In Pakistan, for instance, during the anti-Bhutto movement, when Bhutto was still in power, the British government put pressure on the BBC to withdraw me because Bhutto disliked my broadcasting so much. The High Commissioner called me in, the British High Commissioner, and said, I think you should leave the country. When I told this to the BBC, what was their reply? You should certainly stay on. So public service broadcasting can answer, I think, in two ways some of the problems you've been talking about, the problems of broadcasting, which is either too much under the influence of the government or under the influence of businesses. And I think in two ways it does this. One, by providing something which is genuinely independent of either of those. And number two, I believe it has an impact on the commercial stations as well, and the commercial channels as well, because it sets a standard which, if you were to allow, or which if in Britain were to occur, some of the television broadcasting, and I won't mention which channels, but not one represented here, I don't think, but some of them, or one of them at least, would be laughed out of court because people would see that's just not broadcasting, you know, because they would have this BBC standard to judge it by. And I think it is perhaps due to the BBC that we don't really have that type of channel in Britain. We don't have a Fox News either, although people would love to do it. I think this is in part because of the standards set by public service broadcasting. And public service broadcasting, however, has to be totally free of the government and free of commercial interests. Now, I think I've gone on far too long. Dinner awaits all of you and waits me as well. So I just want to end once again by saying thank you so much for all of you.